In September 2016, I made my first trip into the Egypt Lakes, ascending Greater Pharaoh Peak to stunning fall views. In 2017, I ascended Lesser Pharaoh Peak with Phil before adding on the Sphinx. Since then, I've added on Hayduke, Scarab, and Natalco to my list of summits in the area. I decided in early October 2025 that it was high time I revisit the Greater Pharaoh Massif and add on Middle Pharaoh Peak. In order to experience the larch smorgasbord that is found in the Healy Meadows, Healy Pass, and the wider Egypt Lakes area, I was not disappointed. After a very familiar 7.5 somewhat boring kilometers up the Healy Creek trail from the Sunshine parking lot, I was treated to a very unboring hike through the Healy Meadows. The larches were barely past their prime, glowing yellow and orange as they continued on their inevitable transition towards dull brown. The path was a golden track beneath my feet as I slowly warmed up with the rising sun. At the 9 kilometer mark, I crested Healy Pass, once again taking in very familiar but still mesmerizing views back over the meadows to the Monarch and across the Pharaoh Creek Valley to my destination peaks. Still looking very far at this point. I descended an icy, snow-dusted trail from Healy Pass, making my way slowly through a myriad of glowing golden goodness. There was no wind to disrupt the cool fall air as I marveled at nature's beauty, traveling another 3.5 kilometers to valley bottom at Pharaoh Creek. Finally, at 3 hours and 13 kilometers into my day, I finished my approach, passing through the Egypt Lakes campground and continuing through meadows on an elevated boardwalk in bright sun. Soon enough, I was ascending a steep trail leading through more larches and along walls of brooding stone up to Scarab Lake and Whistling Pass, still far from sight at this point. Finally, I topped out just above Scarab Lake and got my first views of Greater Pharaoh Peak, looming high above me still. I continued through golden forests along a trail that runs to Whistling Pass between Scarab Lake and the Pharaoh Peaks before heading upslope. I took a different line up south rubble slopes of Greater Pharaoh Peak than most folks do, ascending steeply on a more direct line to the east of the regular route. As I ascended, a light dusting of snow and ice made the shifting rubble slick and rather unpleasant underfoot. I made my first summit over 15.5 kilometers in the parking lot and 4.5 hours into my day. From a viewpoint just under the summit, I had stunning views over Egypt, Scarab, and Mummy Lakes and surrounding terrain. Another viewpoint just off the summit offered incredible views along the sheer east face of the massif, plunging down to the valley far below. From Greater Pharaoh, I scrambled west towards Middle Pharaoh Peak, taking in surprising views down to Pharaoh Lake along the way. Easy to moderate scrambling brought me to my third summit of the day, including wonderful vistas over Whistling Valley with Mount Hayduke over its namesake lake and Mount Ball free of clouds for once. I quickly traced my route back to the regular ascent line before descending rubble and scree to tree line and warm sunshine. The larches around Whistling Pass were glowing in afternoon light as I basked in their warmth on my way back towards the headwall. carpet of golden larch needles softened my footsteps as I passed back under Greater Pharaoh's south slopes. Sunlight played tag with shadows as I slowly made my way out of the upper paradise to the lower one. As I approached the top of the headwall that guards Scarab Lake, long stretches of silence, a few panicked pikas, and a raven were my only companions. A late afternoon breeze kept me cool as I made my way down to the Egypt Lakes campground along the headwall. After passing through the campground and over Pharaoh Creek, I resigned myself to a tiring ascent all the way back up to Healy Pass, the second time I'd crest that high point today. After finally cresting the pass, I descended slowly through the last prime larch forest I'd hiked this year. A long, lonely march down a very quiet Healy Creek trail brought me back to the parking lot, completing a 33-kilometer, 10.5-hour day of just under 2 vertical kilometers of a Rockies staircase workout.